Howdy, folks. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am your host, the Mighty Bjorn, and today for you, I have a brand new Dungeons and Dragons video because I'm going to be taking some time. Going to be talking about bards and a bit about making music. Because today, folks, I'm going to be taking time to talk about the hurdy-gurdy. And no, I'm not talking about that thing that you were thinking about doing with the local girl at the pub last night. I'm actually going to be taking time to talk about the musical instrument. And I'm sure a lot of people are kind of questioning right now, what is a hurdy-gurdy? Is it a string instrument? Well, yes, it is a string instrument like a violin. Is it a key instrument like a piano? Well, yes, it's a key instrument like a piano. Is it a crank instrument like an organ grinder? Well, yes, yes, and yes. Actually, it's all of those. And essentially, you would see the rise of the hurdy-gurdy around the 11th century Europe. And it's also become kind of synonymous with pirates, I think mostly due to Sea of Thieves. But pirates actually did use these things, or at least they were around during the age of sailing. But I'm also sure the question's probably coming up too now. What does it sound like? Well, I have a short demo here for you that I'm going to play for you so you can actually hear the hurdy-gurdy in action. Now, I do want to point out that that was a demo from Audrey Vanogradov. He does have a YouTube channel, so you can go check out his YouTube channel, and he does quite a bit with, medieval dance type music or the hurdy-gurdy. He does a lot of videos with the hurdy-gurdy, actually. So go check out his channel. Definitely, big bonus there because essentially, well, I didn't have to track anyone down that plays the hurdy-gurdy and actually plays it quite well, or at least in my opinion, plays it quite well. So go check out his channel, and I will try to remember to have a link in the video description that you could check that out. Go to his channel and check it out, but I may not. So if I do forget, someone go ahead, post in the comments the link to his channel. So essentially, I'm sure at this point you're asking kind of how does it work? Well, the best thing I can do is basically show you a diagram of the hurdy-gurdy itself to show you, kind of explain to you how it works. So essentially what you have for the hurdy-gurdy is you have a hollow box. The body itself is hollow, and then you have a string with a tuning peg that essentially goes to a bridge, much like a violin. Actually, exactly like a violin. You have a tangent, which your tangent, it's essentially, it's a peg that goes up against the string that can change the sounds that the string is giving off. It essentially changes the amount of pressure that is put on the wheel. And the wheel is actually what's making the sound. As you crank it, that wheel turns and it drags across the strings. And those strings is what's giving off your sound. Or at least that's what's giving off your sound. So essentially think of it in the sense of a violin, where you got your strings, so you put pressure on your strings, and that changes the tune that you get out of your strings. And your bow drags across the strings, and with the combination of the friction of the bow across the strings and the strings themselves, that's how you're getting your sound out of a hurdy-gurdy. And to give you a better idea of what the tangents look like, well, there you go. That's the internals of a hurdy-gurdy. So essentially you have a bunch of paddles, and then as you press the keys, you press up and down on the keys themselves will put a certain amount of pressure on the strain. It may be enough pressure that the strain actually kind of releases itself from the wheel, or it could increase the amount of pressure that is being put on the wheel, changing the tune of the strain. Now, there's also droning strains, and that is the little strings on the side. Now, most of the time, those strings are engaged, but not always. There's actually ways to disengage the droning strings as well, or to increase the power, or not the power, the pressure of the droning strings across the wheel. And then essentially you crank it and it makes noise. Yeah, pretty cool device, and actually, it's really complex. I mean, at the time, you're talking the 11th century, these would have been very complex to make. They have quite a few parts to them. And even today, they're not exactly an easy instrument to make, especially considering that you got things like violins out there that, well, they're not easy to make, but they're much easier to make than a hurdy-gurdy is. The hurdy-gurdy, too, for being a smaller instrument, is also kind of a bulkier instrument, as you can see here. And most of the time that I'm seeing footage or whatever of someone playing a hurdy-gurdy, they tend to be sitting down with the hurdy-gurdy sitting in their lap. The whole thing of standing there while in Sea of Thieves and playing a hurdy-gurdy, I think that's actually something that's just kind of a Sea of Thieves-ism, because I've never seen anyone actually play a hurdy-gurdy that way. Not saying it can't be done. I'm sure it could be, especially if you got a good shoulder strap. Either ways, with all that being said, the hurdy-gurdy has kind of fallen out of favor over the years. I mean, there's still people that play it, and you can, from time to time, find medieval reenactors that plays the hurdy-gurdy, though that's pretty rare. I actually personally don't know any myself for all the years I was in the SCA, but that doesn't mean there's none out there. It just means I've never seen anyone play the hurdy-gurdy. And I think particularly that's got to do with there's just other instruments to play that's more transportable than a hurdy-gurdy is. But either ways, I do think it's kind of a great instrument for bards. It's a complex instrument. There's a lot of different tunes that you can play, a lot of different tones that you can get out of a hurdy-gurdy. And they're kind of different and they're kind of cool looking. So I personally think the hurdy-gurdy is pretty cool. And actually, you can get some great sounds out of it if you really know how to play the hurdy-gurdy. All of that being said, if you know how to play the hurdy-gurdy, you're pretty skilled at it, because from what I've heard and from what I've seen online, personally, it's kind of one of those, you're either good at playing the hurdy-gurdy or you're just really bad at playing the hurdy-gurdy. There's really no happy medium. It just either sounds good or it sounds bad. Anyway, folks, thought I would just take time, cover an interesting musical instrument for your Dungeons & Dragons players, particularly for your bards, and even maybe for your NPCs to use, because it would have been a popular instrument during the medieval period. With all that being said, if there's any other musical instruments that you'd like me to cover and maybe kind of discuss about, maybe give some history, so that way we can kind of think more about the music instruments that our bards and NPCs have and would be using in our Dungeons & Dragons campaigns, comment down below. I would definitely be interested in covering more, and actually I'm already putting something else together, putting a bit of a special collaboration together with a friend of mine about another musical instrument that you can actually find within Dungeons & Dragons. Anyway, folks, hopefully you all enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for tuning in, and have yourselves a wonderful day.